It's my intention to correct the meeting minutes,
Okay.
just so you know.
Okay. At this time, I'd like to call the December 15th, 15th, today's the 15th, right?
Yes.
Yes,
Yes.
meeting of the Zoning Board of Appeals to order. Could the clerk call the roll?
Mr. Frary,
Here.
Mr. Lataif,
Here.
Mr. Dolman,
Here.
Mr. Daly,
Here.
Mr. Green, Ms. Pacheco. Here. Chairperson McGinnis.
Here. Okay. The first order of business is approval of the minutes from the November meeting. It's how,
So you do a motion and a second, and if he has corrections, you ask for.
okay.
I make a motion to approve it, Madam Chair.
I'll second that.
The motion's been made and seconded. Is there any discussion?
Yes, Madam Chairman, I'd ask that the official ZBA minutes be corrected to reflect my proper position as stated during the meeting concerning the appeal of Mark Lansing, or specifically page 5 of 5, line 167. It should read, Mr. Green voted for the motion for the reasons stated.
Okay, thank you for that correction. Is there any other discussion? Hearing none, would the clerk call the roll?
Mr. Frary,
Yes.
Mr. Lataif,
Yes.
Mr. Dolman,
Yes.
Mr. Daly,
Yes.
Mr. Green,
Yes,
Ms. Pacheco. Abstain. Ms. Chairperson McGinnis.
Yes. Now, before we call our first case, I'd just like to share that case number 6 by Ingalls and Associates for variances accompanying the subdivision application of 1356 Balltown Road has been tabled until the January 19th zoning board meeting at 7 p.m. During discussions with the planning board on Monday, December 13th, the applicant opted to remove 2 proposed lots from the subdivision in order to reduce the need for variances and add additional open space. They will submit a new package to the planning board by January 10th and plan to appear before the zoning board on January 19th. It is likely we will mail new notice based on the revised subdivision plan. So if there's anyone here for that case will not be heard tonight. Would the clerk call the first case, please?
The appeal by Adam Bach for a variance from section 220-25B1A of the zoning ordinance of the town of Niskeuna as it applies to the property at 245 Menlo Park Road, Niskeuna, New York, located in the R1 low-density residential zoning district, to maintain an existing 4-foot 6-inch height fence which exceeds the height limit in the front yard. Fence section 220-25B1A permits the maximum height for fences located in the front and side yards to be 4 feet. As constructed, a 4-foot 6-inch high fence is located in the front yard. Therefore, a 6-inch fence height variance is required. 12 notices were mailed out last month, and I received 1 reply to that mailing last month from 2 Dynamo Court, Chris and Tracy Sazer. Please consider this email our response to the variance request notification from the Niskeuna Zoning Board of Appeals regarding Adam Bach's 245 Menlo Park Road request for a 6-inch fence height variance. We live directly behind the Bachs. We have seen the fence that they have constructed. Everything the Bachs have done to their property has improved the property and has benefited our neighborhood. We are in favor of their fence and approve your granting the variance to the Bachs for the 6-inch fence height variance request.
At this time, I'd like to invite the applicant forward to state your case, reason, what you're proposing, and what you've done to mitigate the need or reduce the need for a variance.
Sure. This is Adam Bach. I'm actually on the Google Meets, but it appears that I'm not. Maybe I'm visible to you all, or I've also dialed into my cell phone. I don't know which is the preferred mechanism.
I don't think we have a preferred.
Okay. All right. So then I will, I'm communicating via phone. Can you see me via Google
We
Meet? or-
can't
or
see
Can I
you.
shut that down?
We can't see.
Okay,
you.
wonderful. Okay. You can't see me. Okay. So again, you should have received a couple of other notices. I'm surprised it's just the Kazers. It's only the Kazers that you recorded. We had a couple neighbors come up to us, acknowledge the mailing, and then let us know that they were writing letters in support. I saw one of those letters particularly that didn't make the record somehow. So there are other endorsements out there. I think from my side of the equation, clearly for us, this was something done during COVID. The fence does this just so the committee has kind of a record of it. The fence actually is now in what was it formerly a kind of a left alone lot, an undeveloped lot that had stood in Niskeuna for a number of years, forever actually. We bought the lot about a year and a half ago, and since then we beautified it basically. We've made it look really, really nice. And so I did submit some pictures to give everybody a feel for what the lot looks like now that it's been beautified, and then also the fence. So the fence runs in the front yard, but it offsets the street by probably 20 or 30 feet. In order for me to be compliant, the way I understand it is I'd have to be in line with an arc that represented the setback for the house in general, which would mean that I have to move the fence back by about 10 or 15 feet. So moving the fence back by 10 or 15 feet really, quite frankly, changes nothing aesthetically about how it looks or what it does for that front yard, other than it's a very expensive endeavor for me to do that, given that we've also landscaped around it and tried to make it look very appealing to the neighborhood, if you will. So we have revisited the idea of moving it. I got a quote the other day that would be about $7,000 because you can't move a fence. I have to tear the fence out and rebuild the fence. And there's about, because you're moving it back, there's about a 75-foot run that it would have to encompass. So it would be, very, very expensive for me to kind of move that fence back. Again, really without any remedy to the neighborhood, it would look quite frankly the same. So that's really it. We had ordered 54-inch fence, and I was not aware that there was a 48-inch height requirement, or I would have tried to order 48-inch fence for sure. So that's the position and posture I'm in today, and that effectively is my statement, I guess.
Thank you. Any questions from the board?
Mr. Bach, this is Keith Frary. One of your pictures is actually a tape measure. Is that a picture that you took?
Yes, so Keith, yes, it is. But it's almost like your Google Meets thing. I was trying to hold the cell phone, take a picture, hold the tape measure at the same time, and I probably have a pen and an apple in my mouth. So if the question relates to the recorded height of the fence, in effect, and I was willing to screen share, obviously, and show you the quote from Sienna Fence, the fence we ordered is a 54-inch fence. Mm-hmm. So I may have measured inappropriately, but it's a 54-inch fence.
So just so I follow, and I'm not sure I do, the picture of the tape measure is not an accurate measure of the current fence?
No, it isn't. Again, I was measuring below the fence. It sits on a little bit of a slope. The yard actually slopes downward as it approaches the street. So I think I was resting it all the way down on the dirt, which would have implied that it was higher than it actually is. But and again, if you could dial me into the Google Share that I'm logged into, I'd be happy to show you the invoice for the fence and the actual material from Sienna Fence, which indicates the 54-inch fence.
So this was a project that was done by Sienna Fence?
It was.
Were you ever, was there some type of permit obtained to your knowledge or something to build the fence?
So I did apply for a permit, which is why we're in the position that we're in, but I did it during COVID. And so there was no response to the permit for several months. And again, this is where I bear some responsibility, because I was in this position where Sienna Fence, but by the way, Sienna Fence, and nobody ever said, you're doing 54, it needs to be 48. And Sienna Fence never said, I'll get the permit. You don't have to worry about it. There was nothing along those lines. And so I had no knowledge that, I thought, because I was being consistent with the pool fencing we have, it's the same fencing that I have around the balance of the yard. It's an acre right now it's an acre and a half property basically. And the fencing is all the same. It's 54-inch because it's a pool fence. So I think that the way it worked was they assumed, because I was buying the same fence that I'd been using to encompass the pool, that I was effectively, that was okay by code. But nobody ever mentioned it. I didn't know. I applied for a permit. There was really no response. The permit came back after the fence was installed. And again, I don't know if that was a slowdown in town process or record keeping or what it was.
Okay.
And then when it came back as rejected, then obviously I'm in the quandary that I'm in today.
So you applied for a permit. How long before the fence was erected?
I don't recall the dates exactly. This goes back to 2020, so it goes back to kind of March and April of 2020 by my recollection.
Okay.
The quote from Sienna Fence is dated December of 2020.
So Sienna Fence then proceeded with erection of the fence without a permit.
Yeah, they did. And again, nobody.
Well, did you think it odd that you applied for a permit so you could put up a fence and you had not received one and the fence was put up anyway? You were
Well,
the one that applied for the permit, right?
Yeah, I mean, I find a couple of things odd. Clearly, I find it odd even in the beginning of this meeting that we're down a couple of endorsements that I've seen copies of. So I find that odd. I think that's probably a record-keeping issue, meaning that mail isn't making itself all the way through into the town. So I did find it odd that I didn't get a response to the permit request early on. I did find that odd. And then if I go back and I think about the scenario and what was going on, there was a lot of pressure to install the fence, Sienna Fence, to install that fence like in a window, because materials were in short supply. They weren't going to be able to do it. If we didn't do it now, we were going to miss a couple of years. So, or we're going to miss a year at least. So it was a confluence of those kind of things together. No communication back from the town, no notification of approval or denial. Again, during a very odd period of time, that continues, and a little bit of pressure from Sienna Fence to do it now or not be able to do it. And they, by the way, didn't ever ask me about a permit. They didn't say like, hey, we can't put this in because we don't have a permit, or we can't do this, unless you have a permit. I have a history, the town should know. I'm going to do a lot of projects. I own multiple homes within Niskeuna now, 3 homes specifically. We've done a number of projects at this particular home. I've had 2 homes in the past where I've done a number of projects. We're kind of a project family, and we've always, done them by the book. So
But
I'm
you
not,
did,
I'm not,
okay, let's stay on point a second. You did know that a
Sure.
permit was required to do the project, right?
yeah, but I didn't think I was asking for any, I didn't think I would be requiring a variance. I saw it, quite frankly, as an administrative step within the process.
Okay, so I understand the permit didn't come through. Sienna Fence was supposedly pressuring you about getting the fence up. And so you had them proceed without the permit that you knew was required, right?
I had them proceed without any response to the permit that I knew was required, that I thought was basically effectively done, a simple administrative process with a filing fee attached.
And when you got the permit, when you got your application back, you then realized it wasn't just administrative, that in fact your fence was in violation of the zoning ordinance of Niskeuna, right?
Sure. And I was instructed to call the town, and I called the town, and the town said, we have no record of any, apparently the way it was explained to me, they had a denial pile, and there was no denial for me in that pile, meaning that my application was effectively missing. So and I'm being completely forthright through this whole process, because I'll do whatever I need to do. But I was told, hey, look, don't worry about it, because you're just not in the denial process. And then the building inspector, Mr. Canizzo, who's always been very, very fair, said, no, this is still a deal. You have to appeal. And so once I was told that, I filed the appeal, which is why we're talking today.
Now, you said this encompasses what was a vacant lot. You own the lot, you're correct?
Sure. So I bought the lot and I platted it to my existing property.
Okay. And does the fence go all the way around the vacant lot?
The fence goes all the way around the vacant lot.
Okay.
And it encompasses a pool.
I'm sorry?
It encompasses a pool. There's a pool in the backyard, a swimming pool.
Yeah, no, I see the pool, but the pool is quite a distance away from So that fence that goes all the way around secures the pool.
Sure, yes.
Laura, I assume because it's a separate lot, even though he owns both lots, that has no bearing in terms of where the fence should be placed?
He legally combined them, otherwise it would be different fence regulations.
Okay. So at the time the fence was put up, you had legally combined them, correct?
Correct.
Thank you.
Laura, I just want some follow-up. Can you explain to me what's happening with the file, what was received, and what your records are?
Oops, yeah. I mean, I just looked up in our tracking system, the timelines, like we put a complaint in on September 15th of 2020 that there was a fence without building permit. And then in your packet, it looks like we received his building permit application for it, like not very shortly after. It was, I think, stamped September 15th, or well, it's very similar in time from when he was cited for a fence without a building permit to when he submitted the building permit. And I do have recollection. So he came in the same day. And then I do have recollection that he did come in and I know that he was looking for a denial, and I don't know if it had been issued or hadn't been issued, but anyway, once we did call him and say, you need to do your denial. Yeah, so the date of the denial was September 15th. But when he came, I don't think one of the staff members was able to find it. And then we had a number of cases that were moving through, but when we noticed that his timeline was getting close to expiring, we reached out to him and said, you have to go to the zoning board, and then he filed his appeal. So I would say generally speaking, that's accurate, except we don't have a record of the initial permit being filed.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, that's what's missing, and allegedly now, so are a couple of the endorsements for the fence are also missing in this meeting.
And Mr. Bach, did you keep any copies yourself of the initial application?
I mean, I'm in Scottsdale, Arizona today, but I could go back and check my file. I don't know if I did or didn't, but it's likely I probably did. I tend to keep pretty good files.
Thank you. Anyone else on the board wishing to ask questions?
If I may, Richard Green, could you elaborate upon the alleged pressure that you say you feel you were experiencing by your contractor Sienna Fence?
Yeah. So I mean, again, you have to bring yourself back to that period of time, and by the way, it was a period of time of significant social unrest, and not much different than where we are today. But there's a huge demand for fencing, special order fencing in particular, which this is a special order fence because of its ornateness. Was in short supply. There was really no supply for it, and they were directing fences to protect businesses and other things, given the BLM movement. And so fencing was like effectively in zero supply. They then had a job that they had secured this same fencing for. That was where the company was in bankruptcy or something along those lines. And they decided to release the product to me to install the fence. But if I didn't agree to accept that product and install the fence at the time that they installed it, then I was going to be back in queue for an uncertain period of time. And even today, as I called them about the idea that I'm going to have to redo this fence and move this fence back, and I asked for a quote so the number I quoted would be accurate, and they told me that they wouldn't be able to get to it until possibly summertime of next year, 2022. So there's a global shortage of lots of things, but fencing, aluminum fencing in particular, is in significant short supply. And for me anyway, I want to make sure that the house, which is a nice home, is that it looks good, that everything matches and looks good, for the betterment of the community, I imagine, and us. And just again, one other point of record, I didn't go into the office. I called on the phone. It was a phone call that I made where I was told that there was no file and no denial. And that I didn't have to worry about it. So I had not visited until I got the second letter. I got a letter saying that it had been denied and I need to file the appeal. And that's when I went in that day when I received that notification to figure out what I needed to do to rectify it and file the appeal. So from my perspective anyway, I feel like I've been somewhat Johnny on the spot with what I could do to get things done the way that I could get things done. I did make an error, obviously, in having Sienna Fence install it without having heard back from the original permit. I do agree with that, and I apologize for that.
Any other members of the board? Ms. Pacheco, anything? Do you have any questions?
No, Madam Chair.
Thank
All right,
you.
Madam Chair, I got a couple questions for Laura. The questions I have, this seems to be, the fence is, you could see through that fence. And what we're used to, a lot of the fences that you can't see through those fences. Is the town, does this make any different for the fences in our code that, because other fences, if they are 6 feet high, you really can't see through those. And my question to you is, in the past, does this kind of fence, I don't know if it's stainless steel or metal, aluminum, this one, if it makes any different for the code of the town because you could see through it?
No, actually, our code doesn't make that distinction. And I suppose if the variance was granted and in the future, I think the location specifically of the variance is allowed and can't be changed. But if they wanted to change the material of the fence, they could theoretically do that. So if being able to see through the fence is an important part of allowing it to be in the front yard, you may want to specify the material as a condition in the resolution. But the only thing that is, I guess, the code would deal with on this one is it's 54 inches for the pool, and so it would be allowed in the side yard, but it's in the front yard.
Right, but the question is, can we put a stipulation on this? If we were to approve it, then they can't put the other kind of fence where you can't, this one you could see through the fence, so just to me, it's.
Yeah, I mean, Elena can give you good guidance, but as long as the condition is related to like aesthetic impacts on the neighborhood, I think, right?
Yes, we've done that before. Not frequently, but we
Right.
have done that in the past, so that can be a condition of,
Yeah, I remember we have done it the past 10 years, a couple times, where we put a condition, but I just want to confirm that we still can do that.
correct. And this one is already constructed, so it would really be a non-issue for this applicant, but for potential owners in the future, since the variance carries through the future with any additional owners that may happen over time, then that would prevent them from putting up any type of vinyl or wooden fence that you can't see through.
Okay, thank you. The question is, goes back, thank you, Laura. Question for Mr. Bach. Are
Yes,
you
sir.
there?
Yes, sir, I'm here.
The question for you is this fence, you planning on keeping the same fence? No other plans to change it to PVC or wood fence or anything like that?
No, same fence. It's in line with the aesthetics of this fence that surrounds the entire property.
So you would be okay with this fence, only allowing this fence, but not allowing other fences or other changes to the fence?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, I do have a question, and it's more for council. If we were to
We're gonna need-
stipulate that if the fence were replaced at any point, that it would then have to meet the criteria of the ordinance, could we also state that?
When you say criteria of the ordinance, what do you mean?
The height. So, for example, if in 20 years, when the fence needs to be replaced for whatever reason, it's gotten pitted or there's a condition where the owner wants to replace it at that point, could we stipulate that it has to be replaced at the lower height?
No, so if the variance is granted, that's what, part of what I was just discussing. And so
Right.
typically when a variance is granted, it carries through over time. So you can't do that as to time, but as to the material, to make sure that the reason, if it is granted, if there is a motion to grant the variance request, to ensure that the aesthetics of the current fence are maintained over time, then that can be a condition, but you can't limit the time period for the variance itself. Does that answer your
Thank-
question?
Yes, it does. Thank
Okay.
you.
Is there anyone in the audience wishing to be heard on? Okay, thank you. Is there anyone on the board who'd like to make a motion either for or against?
Madam Chair,
God, you want to?
I'll do it. Madam Chairwoman, I'd like to make a motion. I move to grant the application with the condition that future fences be of similar material or construction. I find that the benefit, yes, can be achieved by other means, especially since the listed benefit is wanted a fence. But that would require substantial cost. I don't find that this causes an undesirable change in the neighborhood. Is it substantial? I find that with the combination of only a 6-inch variance and the fact that it's see-through, it is not a substantial change. It is no adverse environmental effects. And this is absolutely self-created, but that is not determinative on the balance. That being said, I move to approve the variance with the exception noted.
Motion's been made. Is there a second?
I'm going to second the motion, and as Mr. Dolman specified, we are going to be specific on limiting this variance to only see-through fence. And the reason I say see-through fence, because I want to make sure if they were to get metal instead of aluminum or something else, so it's not going to be that question. The other reason I'm seconding the motion, because the applicant seemed to be some confusion on applying for the permit, not applying for the permit, or not get hold of people. So with all this said, it seems we're all on the same page here, and the fence is already in place, and that's not a good reason to approve it. But it's already there, and since we put a stipulation on it for all those, and what Mr. Dolman mentioned, I'll second the motion.
Thank you. Is there any discussion on the motion?
Just as a point of reference, Madam Chairman, the packet that we received on the last page has an indication that this is an aluminum fence, 54 inches high, UAF 250, flat top with spear, residential grade black aluminum fence. I would ask that that be placed directly in the record so that there's no confusion about what type of fence is required. So, and again, it's on the last page of the packet with a sienna fence proposal at the top.
Agreed. That seems to be the best description of the materials and what our intent is.
So just so I can make it clear, I think the motion that was made was with the condition that future fences be of the same or similar material or construction. So is the request made to just amend that language to include the specific material cited to in the sienna fence?
Madam Chairwoman, I'm open to that amendment.
Correct. Would the clerk call the roll?
Mr. Frary,
I'm going to vote yes on the motion. I think a couple of things. I'm voting yes, even though the applicant knew he required a permit, applied for a permit. We're still not clear on what happened with that, but he allowed work to start even without a permit. So I don't think that by granting this variance, we're endorsing or supporting that practice by any means in the future. However, I think with the modification and that's been placed on the record with the motion, I think it's consistent with the purpose of not having our ordinance is not to have solid fences in the front yard of houses. And I think that is keeping with the spirit of the ordinance by having an open fence and by controlling if this is replaced. I think that as well will be consistent with the environmental purposes of the ordinance. So for that reason and the other reasons stated, I vote yes.
Mr. Lataif,
Yes, for all reasons stated.
Mr. Dolman,
Yes, for the reasons stated.
Mr. Daly,
Yes, for all the reasons stated.
Mr. Green,
Yes, for the reasons stated with the caveat. And I respectfully, in my estimation, find this request to be substantial as opposed to unsubstantial.
Ms. Pacheco,
Yes, for the reasons stated.
Chairperson McGinnis.
Yes, for the reasons stated. Mr. Bach, your variance has been granted, and I'm hoping that these events do not ever converge again with the pandemic and supply chain issues. But I will assume that you will become a spokesperson for getting permits before projects go forward and share that news in your neighborhood. Thank you very much.
Thank you all as well. Appreciate it.
Will the clerk call the next case?
The appeal of Mitchell Baitholtz for a variance from section 220-18B3B and section 220-13 Schedule IB of the zoning ordinance of the town of Niskeuna as it applies to the property at 772 Hampshire Seat, Niskeuna, New York, located in the R1 Low Density Residential Zoning District, to construct a 24-foot diameter above-ground pool partially within the side yard setback. Section 220-18B3B states that the required side and rear yard dimensions for major accessory structures shall be the same as applies to the principal building. As defined, major accessory structures are detached accessory buildings or other structures in excess of 120 square feet. The pool at 452 square feet is a major accessory structure. Section 220-13 Schedule IB establishes a side setback minimum of 20 feet. As proposed, the pool will be located 11 feet from the side property line. Therefore, a 9-foot side yard setback variance is required. 10 notices were mailed out, 0 responses.
At this time, I'd like to invite the applicant to come forward. Please state your name and address and your application and what's been done to mitigate the need for a variance. Also, I ask that you speak into the microphone for a variety of reasons. It's for the record and also so that when it's being broadcast, people can hear you.
Good evening. My name is Mitchell Baitholtz. I reside at 772 Hampshire Seat, Niskeuna, New York. Today I come forward to request a variance on the side yard because the current setback is required to be 20 feet. I'm looking for a 9-foot variance. I've reached out to the supplier of this pool. We were in contact with them back in September, and at that time he had limited supply of pools, and the only thing that was available at that time was a 24-foot aluminum pool. So I went ahead and put a deposit down, and at that time I started the building permit process. And so the proposed location of the pool is 11 feet from the side yard. And upon review of various locations within my yard, as you can see on the detailed picture I drew up with my appeals, that there is a patio, stamped concrete patio in the backyard, a significant amount of mature landscape, which includes trees, shrubbery, and so forth, and along with a shed, which all this was already there at the time I purchased the house back in July of 19. So with that said, it was nearly, I shouldn't say impossible, but it was difficult to find good location within my yard to place this 24-foot diameter above ground pool. During discussions with neighbors, especially the neighbor at which the variance is being requested from on the side yard, he had no objections to it. He actually was considered doing the same for himself a couple years ago. The purpose of the pool is basically for entertainment of my 3 young kids. Just something to do during the summertime, with, especially now with COVID, not really able to go different places. And this is just something addition that they could do in the backyard. And I want to also state with that, if I move the pool without needing the variance, the pool would essentially be in the middle of the backyard. And at that time, it would cut back on the space that my children would have to play in the backyard. And then, so the purpose of the pool was for exercise and recreational use for my family of 5. And a smaller size was considered, but again, at that time, there was a limited supply because I was looking specifically for an aluminum pool because they last longer than your standard steel pools. And the size, we felt was more comfortable for our family. And then also in my neighborhood, there are various houses with pools. And I just want to add that there are fence on both sides of my yard. They're actually my neighbor's fences, but there's still fences there. And then I own the fence on the back side of my yard, which will help prevent trespassing and also a visual barrier from people. Really, it's not going to be an eyesore to others. And then again, the pool will be properly maintained and installed by a professional company.
Great, thank you. I just have some questions about the picture that you drew on yes, that one that's up there.
Yep.
So behind the pool, I see it looks like a kid's swing set.
Yes.
Is that going to remain should the variance be granted? Okay, and then I see there's mature trees and mature shrubs.
Yep.
So you're not willing to cut any of those?
A lot of them provide privacy,
Okay.
especially right along the patio. It's all arborvitaes. They're approximately 15 feet high. And then there's a couple just trees, Rose of Sharon's, various landscape. Because the previous owner, that's one thing that they really loved is the landscape. We actually, in the front yard, cut it back because it was overtaking the whole front yard.
Okay.
But we like having the privacy in the backyard. It helps divide up amongst our neighbors, just a barrier.
Great, thank you.
Quick question. So can you tell me a little bit about this swing set?
Yep. It has a little fort with it, a little 2-story fort, and then 3 swings that would be near the pool.
Is it on some sort of concrete pad, or is it just like chips on the ground and kind of nailed in? 'Cause
Nailed in.
I have one
Yeah.
for my kid too. Okay. So as you may or may not be aware, one of the things that we're required to do is find the ways that make the smallest impact against the zoning regulations.
Mhm.
And looking at this, it seems to me that one of the ways that you could avoid needing a variance would be to move the swing set and then move the pool back in towards the center of the house. And that would not only avoid the need for a variance, but it would still save that mature landscape that you're concerned about. Is there a reason that you couldn't do that?
Because if we move it back towards the swing set, then we'll have to request a rear variance of 20, because that would be 25 feet. We're currently the pool's set to be at 26 feet.
It's 25 feet in the rear.
Yep.
Okay, that's a good answer. All right, thank you.
Good evening. My name's Richard Green. Will you work with me for a couple minutes here?
Yeah.
Let's pretend we're standing on Hampshire seat and facing the front of your house,
Yes,
perhaps even standing to the left of the driveway.
okay,
Can you envision yourself standing there on the road?
yep.
I can. And from that position, would a person on the roadway be able to look into the backyard and see the pool in the place that you're proposing that the variance be granted for?
There'd be very limited sight because in the front left corner of the house, there's significantly high burning bushes that block the view to the backyard. And if you're driving down the street on, say, from the left, my neighbor does have an RV that would also block the view to see in the backyard. But then again, on the left side of the yard, there's more burning bushes because on both sides of my house, there's a significant amount of burning bushes that are well developed.
Right. I'm concerned about facing your house,
Mhm.
being on the roadway,
Mhm.
being on the portion past the driveway. And you're saying they don't have a view of the pool?
Maybe a foot, you'll see.
Yep. Next thing is, you did mention this, or you can get off the road with me now. We're
Mhm.
changing topics. You had mentioned earlier that you had spoken with the neighbor.
Yes,
And is that the neighbor that would be on your left as you face the front of the house?
it'll be, yes, on the left, at 776 Hampshire Street.
And what did your neighbor have to say about your proposed plan and your application for the grant of a variance?
He had no objections to it. He would be happy to see a pool set up. And he's like me. We would want to keep the landscape there because he also has a mature landscape and without tearing up anything. And yeah, he had no objections to it.
Yep, let me ask you this, if I may, if you'll work with me now, let's stand in your neighbor's yard, the one that we're talking about, and looking through the greenery that you've referenced.
Mhm.
Can you see through the greenery and see the pool? I know you can hear kids.
Yeah, you could see some, yeah, of the pool because there are holly bushes that are directly to the left of the proposed site of the pool.
Yeah, how long has your neighbor, if you don't mind me asking, how long has your neighbor been in the house?
I don't recall. It's because I've only been there 2 years.
Has it been the same neighbor for the 2 years that you've been there?
He's been there longer than me.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, I have a few questions for the applicant.
Thank
This is
you.
Katrina Pacheco. Mr. Bates-Schultz, talk about the backyard, the nature of the lawn back there. Looking from the front of the property, it seems like there's some slope. So I'm wondering, what are the conditions in the backyard?
What do you mean by slope?
Is it a generally flat area, the entire backyard? Are there any hills or bumps or gullies? That's what
No,
I'm
it's-
curious about.
It's a fairly flat backyard, just a slight grade down, but other than that, it's flat.
So in terms of positioning the pool, if there were no other obstacles, you could relocate it slightly. If
Yeah.
there's not an impediment there is my question.
Yeah,
So in the interest of trying to minimize the amount of variance that you're requesting, it seems that on the plan that you drew, the red shaded area that's close to the landscaped patio,
Mhm.
is that like a shrubs and mulch area?
there's, within that area, there's arborvitaes and there's mulch along with various plants such as irises, daisies, all mature plants.
Okay, so the plan seems to indicate that there's a little gap of grass, if
Yep.
you will, between the pool and where the pool is proposed to be placed and the edge of that. Is that correct?
Yes.
So theoretically, and I'm just trying to work with you and trying to minimize the variance you're requesting, if the pool moved 2 feet closer to that, then you would be looking for a 7-foot variance instead of a 9-foot variance.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm trying to understand from your point of view why you're not doing that, or if that would be something that you would consider.
That would be impeded onto that flower bed, and then there would be the root base of the arborvitae's underneath there, and just it could possibly damage the mature plants that are currently there.
Okay, but being that they're more of a flower bed, and I understand there you can have attachment to flowers just like you can to mature trees, it's a little bit less substantial than a mature tree is where I'm heading with this line of questioning.
Yeah.
And also with the backyard, are there any underground systems that might impede the location of the pool? Like
No.
a septic system or?
No, we're on town water, town sewer, and everything runs through the front of the house.
Okay, so you won't even move it 1 more foot to farther away from your neighbor, is that correct?
I prefer the location, but if needed, I could. Just because I want to keep a little bit of a pathway between the current flower bed and the pool, to be able to mow over there or have kids, like if they want to run to the front yard, they could do so without having to run around the whole pool.
And you said that the rear yard setback was a 25-foot setback, correct?
Correct.
So diagonally, even if you push it, kind of looking at your map down and to the left, if you did that a foot in each direction, that would be still 1 less foot that you're asking for in terms of variance.
Yeah.
And you would still have a running space, if you will.
But that just more impedes onto getting closer to the swing set, which we're trying to avoid.
Thank you.
Quick question, sir. I know you said that when you initially ordered this and put down a deposit on it, there were limited pools, and that's one reason why you looked at a 24-foot pool, correct?
Correct.
Have you gone back to the company at all to see if there is availability of a smaller pool?
I did actually speak with them today, and he currently doesn't have any availability of smaller pools.
So they don't have any available?
Not on the aluminum ones.
Did they ever, was it a situation where you paid your deposit? If they had one, could you apply it to a smaller pool?
Yes.
What was the company that you were working with on the pools?
Casual Living, Nova Scotia.
Okay. Did you check at all with any other vendors to see if there were smaller pools around?
I haven't reached out to any other vendors. We like the design of this pool. Based on my discussions, I have a friend that is in the pool industry. He highly recommends this pool. So at that time, and this is the only guy that carries this pool in the area. So that's why we went with him.
Okay, thank you.
Another quick question for you. Talk about drainage of the pool. If you can explain to me your plans, where you're going to drain that pool, because I know you have to backwash it and you have to do all these things, and where you're going to put all the equipment for the pool and so on. Just if you can, for the record, tell me some of that stuff.
Yeah. For the location of the pool equipment, the pump and everything, I was planning on putting it on the back side of the pool, near the kids' swing set, or because I want to, so I wouldn't have to be, it wouldn't be visible from anywhere in the yard, with the exception of the back corner. As for drainage, I did not really give any consideration. I was going to leave I was going to ask the installer the best way for the drainage on that, since they're in the industry of installing these pools and they have a good recommendation of how to do it.
Did you and your neighbor to your left, that's probably the person who's going to be most affected, any of the conversation, did you guys talk about draining the water and what happened on his property or anything like that?
No, we haven't.
You haven't. And you're waiting to let the pool people make that decision, you said?
Yeah, or I could look into it beforehand, because right now they're subject to or as long as I get the permit to install in April. So between now and then, I have time to figure out the drainage.
And this is an above-ground pool, right?
Correct.
Okay. I think you answered my question. Thank you.
So, sir, Ms. Pacheco presented several different options. We try to reduce the need for a variance and definitely the size of a variance. And I wasn't hearing an openness to negotiation. Am I correct in my understanding?
Depending on which location you want me to move it to, I would be open for negotiating. My big thing is I highly don't want it in the middle of my backyard, because even at that, I'd still need a variance if we set it in the backyard, because the rear variance would be in effect.
Sir, I can tell you just for myself which way the wind's blowing with me. And I can tell you that I would be much more open to granting this variance if you did the work to minimize the amount of variance required. However, I can't negotiate with you like that. You have to amend your own request for variance, and then I can vote yes or no on it.
Okay.
So I can only tell, and I have no problem telling people kind of which way I'm going here. I'm telling you which way I'm going here. So that's up to you. But I'm only one of the 7 people on this board.
There was the mention about moving it over a foot or two. I don't oppose it.
Because I'll tell you, we've had a lot of applications for different pool things throughout COVID. And so I am sympathetic to what you're doing. And I've got kids, young kids as well. So I'd like to grant it to you, but we are required to apply some consistency across the board. And we've been pretty consistent in asking people to minimize the variance requested.
Is there anyone from the audience wishing to be heard on this matter?
Before we get there, Madam Chairman, if you would be gracious enough to ask a few more questions.
Sure.
The way you've proposed it right now, what's the distance between the edge of the pool and the edge of the mature bush shrubs around the patio? What's the size of the opening?
You're talking about it's about 18 inches.
All right, so if you're moving the pool closer to the patio, would you be encroaching upon that 18-inch, I'll call it a throughway or a walkway?
Mhm.
Is that a yes?
Yes.
So the way you proposed it, there's 18 inches.
Yes.
And if you move it, it's going to be less than 18 inches.
Correct.
If you move it a foot, then it's going to be only how many inches?
6.
Thanks.
And then one of my neighbors did recently request a variance, which was significantly lower than my variance. The neighbor's located right across the street from me for an in-ground pool. And they were like, I believe the variance was, they were requesting the pool be set back approximately 7 feet from the line, where here I'm requesting the pool be set back 11 feet from the property line.
Are you referring to the Aston Borskis?
Yes.
I did not participate in that matter.
You're asking for 9 feet, not 11,
Oh, well, yeah.
right?
The pool currently set to be at 11 feet from the property line. So I'm
Right. So you're
requesting
asking for
9
only
foot
9.
variance.
Okay,
Yeah.
just want to make sure we didn't change that.
Sorry about that.
No, just make it clear.
Would anyone like to make a motion on this matter?
Madam Chair, I'm going to make a motion
Oh,
to.
wait, Mr. Green wants to be heard.
Will you forgive me? And I think this will be on me because I had some more questions.
Absolutely.
And I may have missed this. Did we have a chance to ask the audience?
Yes, we did.
Okay, thank you.
Did you
Just
want to
making
make a
sure.
motion, Mr. Green, or?
No, but I'm willing to listen to a motion.
Okay. Madam Chair, I'm making a motion, except if you want to make it.
No, I don't.
No? Oh, okay. I'm going to make a motion, sir, to approve this variance. And the applicant looked at a lot of options in this situation. We have had many pools come in front of us. We have approved different kind, different situation. In this case, I can see the applicant looked at other option. He wanted to buy a smaller pool. He even called today to find out if they have that smaller pool. They didn't have it. So whether this benefit can be achieved by other means feasible to the applicant, I'm going to say no, it can't be, because he has a lot of stuff going on in his backyard. He's trying to keep the playground for the kids. He's going to have all the equipment that the pool required to have, the pump, the filters, and all that stuff. Undesirable change in the neighborhood. I don't think anybody can see that from the road, the way it's sitting in the back. So I don't see any detriment nearby to the properties. Is the request substantial? Yes, it is substantial. But again, with this property, looks like to me if he did move it to the back, then he's going to need a setback from the back rear end. So it's not going to work the best way for this property the way it is. Whether the request will have adverse physical or environment effect, actually the applicant is not going to cut any trees, is not going to do any damages to any of the property beside just putting that pool in one spot, and it seems to be available and empty. Is this alleged difficulty self-created? We have to say, yes, it is self-created, but again, the applicant has a reason why he wants that pool in there. And for all these reasons, Madam Chair, I'm going to make a motion, we approve it.
Motion's been made. Is there a second?
I'd like to second the motion.
Motion's been made and seconded. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, can the clerk call the roll?
Mr. Frary,
I'm going to vote yes for all the reasons stated.
Mr. Latif,
Yes.
Mr. Dolman,
I'm going to vote no. I agree with most of the reasons here. However, I do believe that the benefit can be achieved by other means, and I find that determinative.
Mr. Daly,
I vote yes for all the reasons stated.
Mr. Green,
Yes, for the reasons stated.
Ms. Pacheco,
Yes, for the reasons stated.
Chairperson McGinnis.
I vote no. I agree with my colleague, Mr. Dolman. However, even given that, you have 5 affirmative votes, so your motion carries and the variance is granted. Thank you for joining us tonight.
Thank you very much.
Have fun with the pool.
Thanks.
Would the clerk call the next case?
Not until the spring, though.
Would the clerk call the next case, please?
Madam Chairwoman, the applicant for the 4th case has expressed that he has a family emergency and is requesting that the application be taken out of order so that he can be with his wife.
Okay,
If that's at your discretion.
that's fine. So we're going to the 4th case. So will the clerk please read?
Madam Chair?
Yes.
I feel like it's part of our job to also be compassionate to the community. Does the applicant know that it is possible to table this till the next, and they'd prefer to do it tonight, just later? Okay, thank you.
Now, to the table, so that he's now.
He's going to go now instead of number 3. We're going to do 4.
Okay, all right, sorry. Yep.
Appeal by Mohammed Sharapur for a variance from section 220-25B1A of the zoning ordinance of the town of Niskeuna as it applies to the property at 1009 Catherine's Woods Boulevard, Niskeuna, New York, located in the R1 low-density residential zoning district, to maintain a 6-foot fence which exceeds the height limit in the side yard. Fence section 220-25B1A permits the maximum height for fences located in the front and side yards to be 4 feet as constructed. A 6-foot high fence is located in the side yard. Therefore, a 2-foot fence height variance is required. 8 notices were mailed out, 2 responses. Response 1 is, as the owner of 1010 Catherine Woods, I strongly object to any variance from section 220-25B1 of zoning requirements for Mohammed Sharipour's property at 1009 Catherine Woods Drive. The property at 1009 Catherine Woods Drive has a significantly different design, style, and color from all other houses on this street. As a fact, all other houses were built 15 years ago by BH Group and have similar styles and colors. Any variance from the current zoning requirements would further change the harmony of architecture, looking, and reduce all other neighbors' property values. And that's from Quinn Zhao. The second letter is, my name is Lisa.
Sorry, what was the address of the first letter?
1010. So,
Catherine Woods.
yeah, so basically across the street. My name is Lisa Wolchik. My husband, Charles Wolchik, and I reside at 1011 Catherine Woods. Received a letter from the Zoning Board of Appeals concerning my neighbors, Mohammed Sharipour at 1009 Catherine Woods. We understand that the installed metal fence on the side yard is over 4 feet, which exceeds the height limit. We have no objection to the height of the fence, or it is a few inches onto our property. Thank you.
And Madam Chairman, I just wanted to add for this case that during the final planning legal review of this case yesterday, the legal department identified the need, if the board is inclined to grant the variance, that it would require additional legal conditions for the town and the legal department to work through, because the fence is 4 inches onto the neighbor's property. So it's a non-issue if the variance isn't granted, but if you are inclined to grant the variance based on the merits of the case, then we would need to add some legal conditions to it.
I'd invite the applicant to come forward, state your name and address. Please speak into the microphone. Please share with us your application and what you've done to mitigate the need for a variance.
Yes, thank you. Good evening.
You need to speak into the microphone, sir. Thanks.
When I built the house was
Name and address first,
1009 Catherine's Wood,
and your name.
Mohammed Sharipour.
Thank you.
When I built the house was difficult a lot because my son is living across the street. That's why I'm there. I built the house, which during the coronavirus, I sent my guys to get a permit for the funds. He came twice. Then I came. They say we give you 14 days answer. After 6 months, I got the answer from the town of Niskeuna, which is I don't blame nobody because of the closing and those things so on. Finally, I got a letter from Niskeuna town. They came in my driveway and they say, you come for permit. I say, I put twice the application. He said, come again. I came. But anyway, I have a backyard, very poor backyard, which is, I can bring some example, is the same as that, the building is there. I have only 8 feet backyard and 20 feet backyard, which is very poor backyard. I have 6 grandkids. I had to put the fence. So I know it's my fault. I put the fence without application, but application took more than 1 year. Nobody answered. When I put the fence, it is a special made fence made for me because of the ditch. Is 8 feet and 20 feet, small backyard. Then immediately ditches go like I have a jungle behind. So I didn't have the choice. They made a special fence for me. And my neighbor was there. My other neighbor was there 2 days. They saw me. We installed. They installed the fence. We had no choice, like maybe 2 inch in my neighbor property. My neighbor was laughing. He said, because I see your grandkids, I know you need immediately the fence. Otherwise, there's a ditch. Is a creek there and ditch, and also like kind of 20 feet ditch. Anybody go there and gone. But anyway, my neighbor say, I don't mind. I give you later, 2 inch, no problem. You made a special fence, put it. And the next neighbor also say, yes, because of the 6 feet. Why? There is a ditch. If I put 4 feet fence, look like I don't have a fence. Maybe I have 1.5 feet fence if I put 4 feet. So I put 6 feet, at least I protect my grandkids. I got a letter from both side neighbor. They say, I can go with you. I say, no, not necessary.
Okay, any questions from the members?
Madam Chair, I have some questions.
Excellent.
So I just want to understand the timeline and the nature of what you're looking to achieve here. So the timeline is, you put in a permit, a request for a permit to build this fence. The permit wasn't returned in a timely manner. You called up, they said, oh, you got to come in. Okay, so you came in, you didn't hear back, and you built the fence. Is that accurate?
Yes.
Okay. So that being said, is it accurate, because it's something that I saw, heard when you were speaking, was that there's a ditch that you're looking to keep your grandkids out of. Is that accurate?
Yeah, even if I fell down, maybe
Okay.
I get damaged.
So is this section of 6-foot fence limited to the area that protects that ditch?
With 6 feet, my grandkids can live. When I put the 6 feet fence, look like I have 3.5 feet, 3 feet. I have.
You're saying because there's a bit of a slope.
Yeah. So I cannot.
And the fence is down the slope a little bit?
Right, yeah.
So if you're standing at grade,
Yeah.
it's more like 3.5 or 4 feet.
Right, yeah. If I put 4 feet, doesn't make any sense.
And I also see, I just want to clarify here, I can't tell if this is part of the application or part of the packet that the town put together for me. The letter from Ravinder Singh, is that part of something that you collected, or is that something that was sent to the town?
That was part of the appeal package.
Okay, so you collected this letter from Ravinder.
From Rove and also Lisa.
From Ravi, yeah, next door. Okay.
He was coming with me. So
Okay.
I say, no, this is enough.
And I'll just,
your phone number.
the reason I ask is because I just want to know if we had any sort of, so look, we take the input of the community seriously. And we have letters in both directions. So I just want to ask some questions about it. That's all. So thank you. I don't have any other questions, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Mr. Sharifapur, my name is Keith Frary. I happen to live on River Hill Boulevard, right around the corner. And when you purchased this property, you knew the condition of the backyard, correct?
Yes, like I say, because of across the street, my son lived, I had to live with him.
But the question is you purchased the property, you knew that there was, in other words, wetlands in the backyard you couldn't build in. There was this quote unquote ditch back there, that type of thing, right?
To be honest with you, 50% yes, but Mr. Frank never mentioned to me because he was the builder for this area. He never mentioned to me.
Did you walk the area before you purchased it?
Of course.
Okay.
Because,
So you were able to see what was there, right?
yeah.
Okay. Who designed your house? Did you design it or have input into it?
No, my architect did.
I'm sorry?
My architect, the engineer did.
Well, but didn't you tell your architect what you wanted in your house? He didn't just design something and say, surprise, here's what you've got.
To be honest with you, slowly, when I spend my money with engineer, with this, the end, I had to build the house.
Because what I see here
Yes.
and have seen with my own eyes as I walk this neighborhood, the reason that you have a fence in the back is because of the design of your pavers and your patio and your retaining wall, right?
It's 99% for my grandkids.
No. The reason that you have a fence, you surrounded, that the fence intrudes in front of the rear corners of your house. And just so you understand this, the reason that you're before us is because you may not have a 6-foot fence that intrudes forward beyond the back corners of your house, okay?
Okay.
That's why you're here, because yours does. And we'll talk about the other reason in a second. So the reason I see from this diagram and from my own eyes is that you have a paved area with retaining walls and everything else, which wraps around your back of your house, forward from the back corners. So when you put in a fence, you had to put the fence on the outside of that, right?
Yes.
So the question is why did you not, so you could put a 6-foot fence up, keep the retaining walls and the pavers limited to the back corner of your house?
It's only 8 feet.
No,
If I
that's
move
not an answer to my question. Why did you extend the pavers and the retaining wall forward from the back corner of your house, which means you were going to automatically, if you put up a 6-foot fence, be in violation of the ordinance? Did you understand that?
That was not my job. The engineer did. The last time engineer came, he did everything for me.
Who was your builder?
My builder was Fred. Fred? R-E-D, yeah.
Question is, was the fence contemplated as part of the house in the first place, or was it an afterthought?
The beginning, we didn't have a plan to put a fence because we didn't know what we're doing, to be honest with you.
Who put your fence up for you? I'm sorry?
I tell you. Fiscal funds.
I'm sorry?
Fiscal funds.
Fiscal.
So we've already established you put it up without a permit, right?
Yeah,
And I understand all
yes.
the dynamics of
Okay,
that, but
yeah,
you put it up without a permit.
Yes.
Did you have a discussion with the fence company about the fact that you were putting a 6-foot fence in the side yards in violation of our zoning ordinance?
I didn't know the violation is 4 feet.
Okay. You say that you want to put this fence up to protect your grandkids.
Absolutely.
The fence is 6 foot. How old are your grandkids?
From 1 to 5, 6.
So I think it's pretty safe to say that your grandkids are not hopping over the fence, right?
Right. This is
Okay. So, and you understand that everything but those 2 corners can be 6 feet, right?
The 2 corners.
The areas, you look at your own diagram where you've got yellow drawn on this diagram. In your packet, we've got a picture of the back of your
It's on the
house.
screen, right over here. You can use the
Oh, I'm
screen.
sorry. Right up there. You see the 2 corners?
Yes. That is not fence. This is just the door. Is door.
The
Two
gate,
side, yeah.
the gate.
The gate, yeah.
Okay.
Is a gate.
But you understand it's those 2 corners that bring you outside the ordinance, that you're in violation because of those 2 corners which extend beyond the rear corner of your house. That's where you're in violation. You understand that?
Yeah, it's so many reasons because if the whole thing is one size, then put at the front different size. That was not my job. Fiscal did for me.
Okay, but you're responsible for this because you're the
Yes.
owner.
Yes, I am responsible.
Okay? The issue is you can't even correct this in any other manner besides making those sections 4 feet because you have pavers and a retaining wall which are already in place. You're not going to rip those things out and change them. This is all part of the building process, okay?
Yes.
The planning process. You had a federal wetlands and a swale that were
Yes.
there when this was all designed that you didn't even take into consideration. You just said you didn't even think about putting a fence up around the retaining wall. That wasn't part of the initial plan.
Yeah, I got lost. I was here and I was not here. The builder did for me. I mean, this was the beginning.
Let's
I
talk about what really is a problem here.
Yes, sir.
Your fence is on someone else's property, right?
Like I see, we did another choice.
Correct?
He say, yes, put it.
Your fence is on someone else's property.
Couple inches.
Did you, doesn't matter,
Okay.
1 inch, 10 inches, 10 feet. It's on
Right.
someone else's property, okay? Did you have a survey done to make sure that you're in conjunction with this, to make sure that your fence was complying with the property lines?
Yes, I called the engineer. He draw for me.
Did you have a survey done? Do you have a physical survey that is part of your building process? Doesn't sound like it.
Yeah.
Let me tell you what the problem with this is. When we grant a variance of any sort, whether it's a pool, a certain distance from property line, whether it's a fence that extends partially in the front yard, that variance runs now with that property in perpetuity, forever and ever and ever. It is impossible. Your neighbor may not care that your fence is on his property, but he's not living there forever. And the next person that moves in there now has that fence on their property. And if we grant a variance, too bad. They have no choice. If they want to put something on their property line, such as a fence, they can't do it because you're on their property. And sir, I've got to tell you, one of the things involved in this process is this a self-created problem? And normally this board doesn't make that an issue if that's the only problem. But in this case, it is an issue because you're on somebody else's property. You understand that?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Counsel, what I understood Laura to say to us is the property, it being on the other person's property, is something that we have to consider only if we go to approve the variance. Would you like to speak about what we need to know about this issue?
Okay, so if the variance were to be granted, Laura and I talked about a couple of different things, but this board can't actually grant a variance on somebody else's property since that person isn't before the board. So I believe it was discussed with this applicant, the possibility of having the neighbor file basically an application to come before the zoning board, and we can do it that way. My opinion is that because the zoning board really shouldn't be in the position to decide that in perpetuity, the best cause of action would be to require, if the zoning board was thinking of allowing this, to require a condition being that this applicant obtain an easement from the neighboring owner and that be filed within the Schenectady County Clerk's office within 90 days. And if it's not, then the variance would not be granted.
So a few things are going through my head right now. One, it's my understanding that the applicant has had a family emergency, and it may not be the best time to be proceeding with this, especially with intense intense questioning and asking if he has things that he does not have the ability to produce right now. So I'm wondering if how the board feels about tabling this to the next meeting, giving the applicant the opportunity to produce anything that the board would like to see.
I just got a couple more questions. The fence that you have is on your neighbor's property, correct?
Yes,
And your neighbor gave you a letter, they okay with it.
yes,
So you spend the money to put that fence up?
yes.
So if your neighbor was to put that fence up legally, he can get a permit and put that fence up, correct? Because this is not his property. So basically, we're trying to approve something on somebody else's property.
No, I'm going to clarify that. So there's a couple different corners. So in theory, this board can decide with respect to the other side that's not an issue, that's not on the neighbor's property.
Okay,
This board cannot make a decision on the portion that's on the neighbor's property because that person isn't the applicant here. So this board can't act on that portion of
Okay,
it since
so
that person's not the applicant. My opinion as legal counsel is that if this applicant wants to move forward and the neighbor wants to move forward, then the requirement be, if it's even going to be granted, I'm not
Right,
weighing
right,
one way or another, but if it were to be granted, that there would have to be an easement. And that would be for the benefit of future homeowners versus proceeding any
Madam
other
Chair, I
way.
have a quick question for council. Is it appropriate for us to be making these decisions before the easement either is or isn't granted? I mean, like, this is kind of, it's almost moot. We can't have a discussion about this because he's not the proper applicant.
So the way it's done, if we were to do it this way, would be, you can do it, but it's on condition. So if that condition never comes to fruition, then the variance isn't granted. So it's a conditional variance
So are both
essentially.
corners one matter that would have that condition, or should those matters be severed?
That's a decision for the board to make.
but he
who's
can
gonna-
also, the applicant can ask to just approve what he's asking for his property.
Okay,
For
Uh,
what's on his property.
What's on his
The board
property,
can
the
decide
applicant
that.
can right now decide if he wants and then say, I will deal with the other one,
That will not put him
Okay.
in compliance with the
right?
building department. So I want that part to be clear, that even if this board does move forward with respect to that part that's on his property, that does not resolve the total issue. So he'd still have to address those issues.
Okay.
Yeah, even if he reduced the fence to 4 feet on that corner, the fence is still on the neighboring property. So it's a building issue regardless. Like he will have to meet the code regardless. Like if you guys denied the variance and he brought those sections of fence down to 4 feet, the issue of the fence being on the neighboring property, like sometimes we do it where they have a freestanding post between the two properties. And then the neighbor, even though they didn't pay to put it up, essentially owns where it was put on their fence and they can take it down at any time as long as it's not enclosing a pool. But in this case, because it's so integral to like the patio and things like that, and because it has a variance request before the board, we felt an easement was the most appropriate way to handle it being connected to the other fence. It's also, I think it would be very difficult to put a freestanding post on the property line because of the retaining wall on the inside of the fence.
So he owns the retaining wall, and behind that retaining wall is where that fence he put on the neighbor's property?
Right, but what I'm getting, so you don't need a building permit for the patio and the retaining wall. You need a building permit for a fence.
Right, so which fence in here is that the one where it said
I
4
hate
feet?
how small but can you see my cursor moving around?
Yes.
It's just the right side in the screen.
All right,
over
what are we
here.
talking about in there? How,
Yeah, we're talking about like 4 inches.
4 inches?
Yeah.
Height
No, onto the
4
neighbor's
inches
property line. Yeah.
onto their property?
Yeah,
Yes.
And that's where that fence is?
yeah.
And how long is that 4 inches?
I believe it's probably the whole way if you look at where the fence is installed, so.
Just,
Probably like 40 feet.
okay, it is 40 feet and it's on their property? Okay.
Sir, you've been trying to say something.
yes. Instead of I make a long story for our town, which I live here 30 years in Niskeuna, 28 years. I like to take the funds, I order another funds, I put in my property the same. I take that. Is that right with you guys?
I'm not understanding what you said. Could you please repeat?
Instead of I make a long story for the Niskeuna town or for neighbor or for me, I order another funds to put in my property, which is Engel. I take out that
So you're
from the
offering,
property.
you're
Yeah, I
offering to
I
take,
move, yeah, because I see is a lot of,
so so let me just repeat back what I think I heard, that you're offering to take down the fence that you've put up and
that
put
40
up
feet,
a
20 feet, whatever,
fence
yeah.
that meets code.
Yeah.
Then
And you're
Then
just withdrawing your appeal.
you're
correct?
withdrawing your appeal and, yeah, I mean.
I make easier for
That's up,
everybody.
that is your right to do. You have that right to do. And as far as going forward with the new fence, you would go through the process of working with the building department on that.
Yeah, as long as my old fences stay there, but that part I change.
Does he have to come back, Laura? It was a new application or?
Hang on a second, because I want to make sure that you understand. I'm not sure that I'm getting the idea that you do understand. Start on the left side of this photograph, the left yellow circle. Do you see that?
Yes, sir.
Okay. There's no pavers and retaining wall that actually extend up above the corner of your house there, correct?
Yes.
There's not.
No.
But yet your fence goes up, I don't know how many feet. Your fence, is there a gate there or what's?
It's a
there?
gate.
Okay.
It's no fence.
If you were to bring that piece of fence that goes from right to left to the side of your house, back to the corner of your house, you're in compliance with the code on that side, on the left side. You understand that? In other words, if I may.
Can I?
Just right here.
Yeah. This is gate.
This is the corner of your house. Do you
Yes.
see that?
Yes.
The fact that this gate and this piece of fence is here on the side of the house, you're out of compliance with the zoning ordinance, okay?
Okay.
If you were to take this, and there is no retaining wall or anything, if you were to bring this back, this piece, bring it back to the corner of your house, right there, you would be in compliance. You wouldn't even need a variance. You understand that?
This one is hard to move. This gate is very hard to move. It's this is $12,000 gate.
Maureen.
That part I can do is 40 feet.
But this is what I'm
That-
trying to
that's
give you an
I can't.
alternative, that you don't need a variance, you
can't
don't
take
even need a.
Well, sir, Keith, he's withdrawing he's going to go back to the building department. He's going to build a new fence. He's going to take down his old fence, and he's going to work with the building department to be in compliance.
Okay, let me,
I don't know why you're getting upset. You've been yelling at the poor man, yelling at all of us. Can you talk in a calm voice?
this is my voice. This is my natural voice.
Okay.
I apologize, Madam Chairperson, if you don't like it, but it is my natural voice. I just want to make sure before he withdraws it, that he understands how he needs to bring it into compliance. I don't think anybody's explained that to him in this setting. If you withdraw your application, this can't exist there at 6 feet high. You understand that?
Yeah, I understand, but this is gate. I cannot cut or I cannot change. See, can I come here? Sure.
Madam Chair? Madam Chair,
Yes.
can we ask that the town give the applicant some guidance on this?
Yes.
Rather than do it in this particular venue?
Yes. So Laura, can you please give some guidance?
Yeah, I mean, we could, because there's multiple options and he's always going to have the easement issue, like, we could adjourn it to the next meeting if he wants to continue it, and otherwise he could withdraw it with us.
I think that makes the best use of everyone's time.
I'm sorry.
Sir, would you be okay? Sir?
The microphone, sorry.
Madam Chairman, may I suggest that respectfully?
So, sir, what we're suggesting is that we postpone our conversation for this evening, and you meet with the building department. and you work out what the new plan is going to be for your fence. You may or may not need to come back to meet with us. The building department will go over with you what the regulations are, what needs to be moved, what the heights are, all of that. If you do need a variance, then you would come back. If you don't, then you move forward with your new
Yeah,
fence.
but anyway, the code is 6 feet. If I draw the 6 feet for him, they say no, I have to come back again.
It's where you put it. If you move it back so it aligns up with the back of your house,
Yes,
then you're not here.
even if it's 6 feet.
Correct.
Okay, that's
So you will meet with Ms. Robertson, and she will go over the plans with you, but it can't be where you have it. It's the location that's the issue on
Mr.
that one side.
Mr. Sharif report, basically it comes down to this. If you withdrawal is forever. If we postpone this, then you have a moment to meet with the town with the special interest of the board, making sure that you get the attention you need, at which point you will be able to make some determinations as to what you want to do. You don't have to come back. If you're going to end up withdrawing, that's fine. You don't have to come back here to withdraw. You can withdraw at any time. So my suggestion, only because it gives you the most options, is that you allow us to table this discussion, meet with the town, figure out the best plan forward, and then you come before us if you need to. And if you don't, I wish you well.
The only other thing I'd add to that is if we proceed and we deny your variance,
Denial is forever.
then denial is forever. You cannot come back.
is not denied.
right now,
we're
we-
just, right now, what we're suggesting is postpone it, come back, and let's make sure that we get the best outcome for everybody.
Okay,
We're just adjourning your,
all right,
and then you decide with Ms. Robertson what you're gonna do.
I agree.
Madam Chairwoman, I move to table this discussion until the next meeting.
A motion's been made. Is there a second?
I second.
Can the clerk call the roll?
Mr. Frary,
Yes.
Mr. Lataif,
Yes.
Mr. Dolman,
Yes.
Mr. Daly,
Yes.
Mr. Green,
Yes, for all these reasons.
Ms. Pacheco,
Yes.
Chairperson McGinnis.
Yes. So, sir, please be in touch with the building department. Thanks for joining us this evening.
And I hope that you and your wife have the best resolution for whatever's going on. I'm so sorry to hear that you're having an emergency.
It was so young.
Oh,
Thank you.
Thank you. Can the clerk call the next case, which I believe is case number 3?
Appeal of Scots Fava for a variance from Section 220-18B3B and Section 220-13 Schedule IB of the zoning ordinance of the town of Niskeuna as it applies to the property at 958 Gloucester Place, Niskeuna, New York, located in the R1 low-density residential zoning district, to construct a 12-foot by 20-foot shed partially within the rear yard setback. Section 220-18B3B states that the required side and rear yard dimensions for major accessory structures shall be the same as it applies to the principal building. As defined, major accessory structures are detached accessory buildings or other structures in excess of 120 square feet. The shed at 240 square feet is a major accessory structure. Section 220-13 Schedule IB establishes a rear setback minimum of 25 feet. As proposed, the shed will be located 5 feet from the rear property line. Therefore, a 20-foot rear yard setback variance is required. 9 notices were mailed out, 0 responses.
I'd like to invite the applicant to come forward, state your name and address, and please state your case and what you've done to minimize the need for a variance.
Scots, Fava on 958 Gloucester Place, Niskeuna. I'm requesting a 20-foot rear yard setback variance. I don't know if I'm as prepared as the other people. I didn't realize this was so involved, so I apologize. Basically, I just want to keep it short and simple. I've got a lot of lawn equipment, and a shed the size of um, 12 by 10. It's just not large enough for my needs. When I came to get the permit, I was a little bit surprised that I needed a 25 foot rear setback because this shed the size that I need would basically put the shed in the middle of my backyard, which I think would be more undesirable than if it was back closer to the rear property line. So I think back by the rear property line is the best position for the shed. In addition, my backyard, it slopes down. The most level parts are back by the rear property line. Another thing is beyond my rear property line is just a wooded area. It's not like there's a backyard there. To the right, facing the house to the right is a white vinyl fence that the neighbor put up. So I don't think a larger shed would be like an eyesore or anything. And that's basically it.
Have you purchased the shed already?
No, I'm gonna build it. My friend and I are gonna build it. I provided the town with the shed supply list and.
Great. Now, I see in the picture submitted, it's a garage shed plan, and the picture that they shows it, with a driveway going up to it. You're not looking to do anything like that, are you?
No,
Okay.
not at all.
Any questions from the board?
Is this a kit or a prefab kind of structure?
No, I'm gonna, I researched it on the internet and I got a supply list and I'm just gonna get all the supplies like from Lowe's.
So the picture that you provided here is just a sort of a schematic of what it's going to look like.
It's gonna look like that. Yeah, I'm gonna go off of the
From
supply list.
shedplans.org.
Richard, just if you could elaborate on what types of things you are thinking about storing in the shed if this variance is granted.
Well, I have a riding lawnmower with twin bagger. I've got a log splitter, a rather large log splitter because, we like to have fires in the wintertime inside. So the log splitters, it's large, and I've got snow blower, pressure washer. I've got push mower, weed whacker. I mean, pretty much every lawn tool you could think of. But in addition, I'm also a real estate broker, and I have my own real estate posts that go in the ground, and they're large, and I've been carrying them up and down the basement stairs, and it's just, it's not easy to do. So
You're talking about wooden posts?
yes, pressure treated wooden posts.
Yeah, what's the approximate dimensions of these? wooden
It's a 4x4 8 post by 4x4. I believe it's 3.5, 4 feet.
And how many of
why?
them do you have?
I've got 10 of them. So they're heavy, and carrying them up and down the basement stairs is not something that I enjoy doing.
I appreciate that. Forgive me for asking, but could you store those posts somewhere else on a business associated with the company?
Well, right now, my business, I work right out of the house. So I just started my brokerage in the spring. So at some point, I would like to potentially have an office, but right now I don't.
Have you given any consideration to, as efficiently as possible, storing those items? Such that you might be able to get by with a smaller shed, or perhaps a shed that's not quite so tall
Well,
at the peak, you see what I'm saying?
yeah,
And I hear you, there's a fence there, your neighbor put up the fence, but you, from that picture that I'm looking at, can you see where I might be thinking, you know, the peak of the roof it is what it is and where it is, but it's kind of, could be, some might consider kind of tall?
I mean, honestly, you know, I just have a lot of equipment and a 12 by 10, which is, I think, the max the town allows is just, it's just not sufficient for my needs. I've, you know, tried to store things in the garage and, you know, we have 4 cars, you know, and only 1 car can get into the garage. So,
What is, if I may, what is the height at the top of the roof?
I don't have that in front of me. I
I think it said
apologize.
less than 15 on your paper.
Yeah,
And what's the difference between the top of the 6-foot, help me with the math, the top of the 6-foot fence and the top of the roof? How much difference, what's the amount of height above the fence line?
Are you talking about the rear fence?
Right by the, yes, well, the side fence, your
The
neighbor's.
side fence is a 6 by 8 vinyl.
Right, so what's the difference from the 6 to the top of the roof line? The
Um,
6-foot fence to the top of the roof line. Help me with the math here.
Well, it's saying 11 feet, 11 and a half feet. So 6 by, what are they, 6 feet high? So it's like 5 feet, 5.5 feet. My math's right.
All right, thank you. And have you talked to your neighbor about the fact that if your application were to be granted for the size that you're asking, that there's going to be that 5.5 feet?
Honestly, I haven't. But we get along great, but I have not talked to him about that, no.
Does he know that you're asking to put a shed in? Did you have a chance to talk to him about
I
that?
think at one point I talked to him about having a shed, but
Oh, well, what did he say?
he didn't have any adverse reaction.
Because if we grant this, he's going to wake up one day and see 5.5 feet of, the top of your shed. So that's why I'm asking.
Well, I mean, I can put it pretty much anywhere around in the back. I can put it farther away from his property, if that's an issue or a concern, closer to the other neighbor.
I'm not asking you to do one thing or the other, honestly. It's my job to ask. And these are some of the things that are coursing through my mind.
I don't know if there's much difference in height between a 12 by 20 and a 12 by 10, quite honestly. There may not be much.
Gotcha. All right, thank you. You've been very kind and patient with my questions. Thank you.
Any other questions from the board?
Yes, Mr. Scots Fava, this is Katrina Pacheco. We've heard a little bit about the height of this. Could you clarify the position at the rear of the property that you're talking about? The plan had some numbers written on there. Could you talk about what those numbers are exactly?
As far as the position of the shed, or it's going to be,
Yes, the position of the shed.
okay. So if you're facing the backyard, you're going to see the long side, 20 feet wide, and then it would be 12 deep. Instead of, so basically the garage door is gonna be on the side, just like you see in the picture there. That's how it's gonna look from the backyard.
So as I'm looking at these plans here, as you presented them to us, are they on the side towards the is the door on the side towards the center or on the side towards the outside?
I think you can do either or when you
If I'm
build it.
facing it from the front of the house, are you planning on putting the door on the left or the right? I apologize.
I think I'm gonna put the door on the,
Or if you haven't made a
I think I'm
decision, that's a reasonable answer too.
you can do either or
Okay.
when you build it, but I think I'm gonna put it on the, if you're facing it, I'm gonna put it on the left side.
Okay.
Okay, my question was about that position. You have the numbers 20 feet and 5 feet written on the plan. I just want to make sure that I understand the neighbor to the right, who you said you had spoken to, who did not have any objection, that the 20 feet is your distance from that side where the neighbor has a 6-foot fence.
Oh,
Is
yeah,
that-
the side setback is fine.